Thank you so much for having me here ครับเรียนอาจารย์พินิจครับอาจารย์อุดมครับแล้วก็ so today I would like to spend 25 minutes on updating what is relatively new. Actually it's actually not new. So the topic is about clinical applications of human microbiome. So we are talking about the micro, and we will be hearing a macro, including like all kinds of interventions. But now, what if we talked about the microbiology in our system? So let me start with the case as Mr. DBM 39, health conscious young man. So he has no diseases. He cannot get any ICD-10 codings into his records. But he still have to try to do the healthy lifestyle. Nonetheless, conventional approaches could not explain clinical symptoms that he experiences. So as clinicians of the sickness, we want to find some pathological diagnosis. But so many people around the world have these symptoms and they cannot just explain in the disease-focused diagnosis. So he still have symptoms of allergy, digestion, and some abnormal laboratory parameters, creatinine kinase, testosterone, DHEA. So imagine how many specialists he has to be consulted for, right? So this is not a case summary. This is actually the pre-authorization medical certificates that I prepared and I successfully got insurance company to pay for it. Okay, so I just added the term, these symptoms, these abnormalities can be explained or can be related to the dysbiosis. Okay, and the companies paid, insurance company already pays for these things nowadays. They don't only pay for endoscopy, they now pay for microbiome analysis successfully. So when we did this, we came up with the result. And now today I would like to share to you what the result looked like and how as a clinician we would like to move on with these kind of complicated numbers, okay? Imagine the ICD-10 code K59.9 is the only one thing that I can find for dysbiosis diagnosis. I cannot find anything else. They don't even have the term dysbiosis in ICD-10, okay? But in the end, let me show you what we recommend to this person. We recommend him to reduce dairy protein intake because this guy has been taking too much protein every day. And we try to recommend some kind of over-the-counter probiotics. And we try to maximize the use of data from the microbiome analysis because we don't want him to get some generic over-the-counter probiotics without any evidence support. We prescribe fluconazole for fungal treatment. All this is because of this kind of data that you might be seeing more and more from now on. This is the gut microbiome analysis from a human poop. And this one costs almost 10,000 Thai baht per poop. So this is not about stool examination for occult blood and parasite infestation, like what we did in medical school 30 years ago. Now we talk about 10 or 20,000 baht per poop examination. And we are getting this kind of data. We see names, genus and species of bacteria of a person. And we no longer talk about pathogens anymore because each bacteria themselves have no idea that we think of them as pathogens. They just live their life in our body. So we have to understand more. We don't blame bacteria without reasons anymore. So you will see that we can compare the changes before and after our treatment. And in this person, we can compare these detailed data for each follow-up visits. So in the end, we found that the fluconazole, for example, can get rid of the fungal infection in these persons, and we can modify some kind of metabolomes. So I would like to stop this case right now because it seems to be more and more complicated. So let's see what the world looks like from now at this point. I called it microbiome and probiotics enterprise that might and may be affected our clinical care. So in this whole conference of the gastroenterology, this one and other ones, we mostly focus on pathogens. We focus on antibiotics. We focus on advanced interventions. But we also focus on fecal microbiota transplantation as an intervention. This is like re-engineering or resurrection of the whole ecology. But this is just part of the clinical care. But even more and more important is the microbiome analysis that I show you the result. So I think as a gastroenterologist, we should be familiarized more and more about this kind of complicated data. Imagine endocrinologists look at blood sugar and A1C. But now we look at each bacteria names, 60 or 50 of them in one poop, in one visit, okay? And imagine people throughout the world try to find some kind of so-called good probiotics over the counter, and they have no idea whether those probiotics actually good or bad for them. And now as a clinician, we have to be intervening this relationship. So this is a big gap of knowledge between the consumer and the products. So now I'm introducing to you the role of clinicians to help. So I call this like you have a famous barber. You always come back to that barber to have your hair cut because you trust him. So as a clinician, we have to be trusted by patients, right? Whenever the microbiome changes, we should see them and discuss with them what are the changes about, right? So I involved in this field starting from my interest in finding some kind of targeted probiotics. That means probiotic is like medicine. So we want to try to find some good probiotics. And what I try to target was should be able to be measured objectively. Okay, so when I call it targeted probiotics, it means we have to quantify things. So it should be objective measure for evidence-based medicine, right? So it means I have to identify some target. So what I try to get is the fat reduction. So this diagram shows our human subject recruitment for my survey. We try to compare the microbiome differences between the healthy one, I call it non-fatty people, on the green, and those fatty ones. But this one is not only about fat in the blood, it's also about fat in the skin, measured by the body scan fat percent, and also fatty liver, NL, AFD, NASH, whatever, it can be measured using the fibroscan. So I try to quantify 3 fatty spaces using the standard method. And I try to compare and try to find, and we successfully found at least 38 isolates of probiotics they are single strain probiotics that we found that are very abundant in those green people. But the other 7 groups have relatively much less. So we hypothesize that each of these single probiotics should be able to reduce fat in the blood, fatty liver, and the body weight. And mostly it works for weight reduction, followed by the fatty liver, and not much with the cholesterol reduction. But in the end, we try to prove each of these single-strain probiotics. These are our papers about the targeted fat reduction by single-strain probiotics. You know, it's quite difficult to conduct a research to prove recipe of probiotics. But in over-the-counter probiotic, you find all the recipes. But we try to think of it like one by one, step by step. So I have to try to prove each single strain for each fat reduction measurements, right? So we successfully prove and publish some. And this one is Lactobacillus acidophilus. We've proved that it can reduce fat in all these three spaces. But what is more interesting is that it doesn't work on its own. You know, the Lactobacillus acidophilus, this did not reduce fat, but it promotes Akkermansia, muciniphila. And this one, I don't think you can find it over-the-counter probiotics. That means if we want to increase these good germs, Akkermansia, you have to find another ways, not direct refill. And our paper not only reduce fat, but we show that, okay, so if you don't have enough Akkermansia, just try to get Lactobacillus acidophilus because it will indirectly increase Akkermansia in you and finally reduce fat later on. That makes sense, right? So this one paper can help us understand like, okay, so this is not the direct relationships anymore. We are talking about the ecology, how best we can help the patient choose what is the best probiotics for their bodies. Okay, it's no longer about over-the-counter anymore. And then we keep proving those bacteria isolates that we identify from the non-fatty people in our paper. But all this is about targeted probiotic, which is not the interest for today. Today's interest is actually about this personalized approach, which is on the other way around. So imagine we try to analyze the microbiome composition of a person, and then we try to help him or her improve it, and we remeasure it. So focus on the term analyze and manage. So imagine as a gastroenterologist, you look at the red spectrum on the left of those people who have sickness. They have sickness, very severe ones. But in the society, we have lots of people who are in the green zone, in the middle zones also. And they might have some symptoms that cannot be explained, either GI or non-GI reasons, right? So now imagine the clinical practice that we now on measure the microbiome for every single follow-up visits, as if an endocrinologist check blood sugar every visit. But our data is actually much more complicated. And then we try to intervene between each visit. And then we keep measuring it. Okay, so the microbiome concept have to be measured correctly. In the research, you mostly see the alpha and beta diversity, but that doesn't help much with the clinical practice. The other thing that can be should be understood is the term diversity that I mentioned. So when we talk about alpha and beta diversity, we mostly talk about ecology that should be fulfilled. Okay, but it doesn't concur with the clinical practice. But the stability and resilience is more related. So the stability means for each of us in the room, we have the current states of the microbiome profile, right? And it should be stable. It should not change much for each day. And each of us, we will have totally different patterns. We call it enterotype. But maybe sometime we exposed to some new antibiotics. And that is the big factor that may be to the point of the resilience that can make a major changes to our microbiome system. So I like this diagram. So this is about the healthy states and degraded stable states. So people can move between these states, okay? So this is like the green and the red states. So if you are so healthy, you are in the green states. If you're not so healthy, you're in the red states. And mostly red state means what? Mean IBD, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's diseases, because that whole ecology gone so wrong. But we have been seeing so many patients who have symptoms. We see patients with dyspepsia, we see patients with reflux, we see patients with motility disorder, but they are maybe in the green zone. And we maybe the gastroscope or colonoscope cannot identify any pathology or ulcers, right? So this is the almost the most recent paper in Gut journal. So this one, they try to show us the states. So we can have the minor changes of the stage. But some people have a major turbulence, so that we have a major change of stage. Okay, so this is what we should be understanding about the clinical practice for the patients. Then when we try to recommend the people, we no longer talk about medicine anymore. So we conduct a simple 7-Eleven survey to see how many yogurt in the 7-Eleven market. This one require no ethics approval because we just take picture of the food label on the yogurt product. You know what? We find 149 different products from 14 companies. And they contain at least 1 or 2 probiotics or prebiotics or postbiotics or symbiotics in the products. And no one tried to prove it, whether they are live or not live, but because they are registered as food. Okay, and believe it or not, some of these names on the screen are not on the Thai FDA list of approved prebiotics. Probiotics, imagine that. So there are some legal discrepancies between the real practice and the professional knowledge, okay, in the field, okay. And this is the over-the-counter probiotics. I just delete the brand names, but you can see that the X's show each single probiotic in each brand. Imagine if the patient come to us and ask which over-the-counter probiotic is good for me. You cannot even have any idea how to recommend without data, without microbiome data, right? So in the near future, microbiome analysis should be more and more common and less expensive, okay? So this is what we envisioned. And right now, in the meantime, we try to do some workaround solution. So on this screen, I show you my probiotic dashboard that I help my patient choose which over-the-counter probiotic that is for you. So the patient don't have to find it on Lazada or Shopee website on their own. So based on the gut microbiome result, if I try to increase bacteria A, B, and C, I just filter that bacteria A, B, and C in my database. And it will just show which in the over-the-counter probiotics brand in the market have at least these 3 probiotics brand A, B, and C. At what amount, at what CFU, at what doses. And maybe some probiotic recipe have more than 3. So I also have another platform that is like probiotics benefits. So we try to create a summary of evidence, okay? So in this one, if you look closely on the lower right, you see PMID. And on the lower upper right, you see SCDO. S means symptoms, O means, C means conditions, D means disease, O means organs. So this is the way I try to explain about the outcomes, because when you search for papers, evidence on probiotics, data, result, they usually have a mix of outcome description. Some paper talks about symptom improvement, so that's S. Some paper talks about conditions like constipation. Some paper talks about diseases like cancer or Alzheimer. Some paper talks about organs. Okay, so I call them SCDO to make it harmonized list of outcomes. At least to make my dashboard work quite okay. And whenever I try to filter what outcome I want to focus, I can do this with my dashboard easily. So when I click this PMID link, it will go directly to that paper. So this is the easiest workaround solution in my practice nowadays as a non-gastroenterologist,นะครับ. And so I see the potential of personalized probiotics because we cannot find or prepare the real personalized regimen of the probiotics, because you will have to register each of your recipe to the FDA of the country. It's not possible economically, right? So the only way to do that is to make it personalized prescription. So I get a patent for the personalized probiotics prescription machine. So this machine will sit at the clinic setting, not over the counter. So people just come and see me at the clinic, and I can just key in the result from the microbiome analysis. And my AI can suggest and actually can cook the probiotics drink right away. And that will be taken at the clinic and go home, nothing to carry back to avoid FDA regulations. So we will try to get the single probiotic supply approved, okay? And then we mixed it at the clinic using this machine. This machine has not released yet, but I get the patent for the design. So it's kind of like a probiotic Nespresso. And today, I would like to end with this one because the clinical practice like this, I believe, not common. Maybe this is the only first time in the world or in Asia. So I would like to welcome all of you here to join us design the multi-specialty adaptive protocols, MAPS, in the assessment and management of gut microbiome in clinical setting. We already started the draft. You can think of this like a clinical practice guideline, okay? And this guideline will be not only the gastroenterologists, but other specialties. And we try to make this evidence-based. And we also concerned about the financial issue and the feasibility issues. So if some of you are interested in co-authoring these guidelines, please email me. We welcome everyone. Right now we have a team from Chulalongkorn, Thammasat, Bamrung Rat, and Vital Life. We have at least 4 institutions drafting the version 0.9 guideline. And we try to involve more and more. Okay, and this is adaptive. That means we will revise it every maybe 3 or 6 months, and we try to get this guideline or protocol published. So let me briefly scroll through these sections. So we try to classify people into PCC and IUP. PCC means patients with complicated conditions. Usually are those people with sickness or illness. But the other group, the gray zone, the green zone are the IUP individuals. They are not considered patients yet, but they may have some symptoms. So we call them individuals with unclear health problems, IUP. So in this guideline, we try to dichotomize people into groupings. And then we try to measure the dysbiosis. How bad, how dysbiosis their conditions are. And we try to think about initial screening for basic pathogens, maybe some optional screenings for food sensitivity. And we will put in the detail the gut microbiome analysis that the clinician should be aware of, and the metabolome assessment, digestive inflammation and immunity assessment, and the gut microbiome specific management. So imagine Akkermansia from now on. This guideline will help you decide what to recommend. I can give you some hint. For example, if you don't find that Lactobacillus acidophilus in my paper, the evidence that we found was that you can try some metformin. The relatively not so high dose of metformin. Papers support the increase of Akkermansia using metformin alone. So this kind of evidence will be included in this guideline to be published. So we welcome all of you to join. No matter more or less you can contribute, we welcome all. We want to make this international guideline initiated by the Thai team. So I think, so this is the first page of the draft. So please consider joining the Thai team to make at least the first Asian guideline for the assessment and management of the gut microbiome in clinical settings. I think I take enough time to share you the idea. Thank you so much for having me here, Kap. Thank you so much, Kap.